All right, welcome to the show today. On this show, as you know, we talk about marketing, business tactics, technology, things that help rural communities and rural businesses, farms, farm-based businesses compete in the modern marketplace. And it's my humble opinion that access to broadband internet is one of our top priorities, or should be. There's some new initiatives announced recently by the USDA, I believe, just shy of $750 million in loans and grants to help farmers, rural communities get access to broadband internet. And there's some new technology that has been around for a couple of years, but it's finally in the next year or so going to be available to a lot of people in rural communities, and it's shaping up to be a pretty good deal. So let's get into it.
I have a love-hate relationship with marketing. Really? I've got to do what? All I want to do is farm.
Welcome to the SI Farmer Podcast. If you want to market your farm, farm-based business, or craft food business directly to the consumer, this is the place for you. Welcome to the show. So back in the middle 1800s, public education became kind of a mandatory thing. And we could have huge discussions on whether public education is a good thing or a bad thing. There's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that will, make arguments, and, there's a lot of both positive, negatives. Like most things, life is not black and white. There's a lot of gray. But Horace Mann said, education is the great equalizer. I mean, his quote was a lot more complicated than that, but that's basically education. Access to education is an equalizer. It helps us compete with one another. I mean, I used to compete in a couple of sports. My kids were athletes, and I want to win. Don't get me wrong. I am a competitor, and I've got one of my dearest friends he is hyper competitive. I love it. I love competing against people who like to compete. The thing about competing, in my mind, I want to beat you on your best day when I'm having my best day. I don't like unfair advantages in competition. I don't want to beat you when you're having a bad day and you're not ready, because I don't think that gives me that feeling of victory that I like. And, I've taught my kids to be good sports. I mean, in all things, I want to compete hard. I want to play hard, but I also want to be humble about it on those rare times when I could win, But I wanted to teach humility, that once I win, I can have my celebratory high fives, and then I want to walk over and shake your hand and say, hey, man, that was a heck of a game, or a heck of a match, or, great roping, or whatever it was. There should be humility in all things, but competing on equal playing fields is fun, and it gives us all, the best rise to the top. So, when we talk about internet, getting access to internet, it allows rural communities to compete on a world stage. I think I ought to jump into this really quick because I think it's important. We see, if you live in a rural community like we do, I'm sure you see the signs on every street corner saying, broadband access, available now, call whatever the phone number is. And it turns out to be one of the satellite internet providers. And most times, it's been my experience, I don't want to get them mad at me, but it's been my experience, I've had several of the satellite internet services, that it does not meet the requirements that we need to be competitive in business. It's great if you're surfing for, a recipe, you're trying to watch the occasional YouTube video, but it's been my experience that in a business environment, it doesn't meet our needs, because while it may meet the definition of broadband, which the FCC classifies broadband, used to be a lot lower, but the FCC classifies broadband as 25 megabits or greater. But speed is only one of the characteristics that we need to think about. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on the technology, but there are some other things that we need to be thinking about when we look at broadband and we call one of those companies. We need to be asking about a little thing called ping, P-I-N-G. And basically what that is, in very simple terms, and I don't want to get in, this isn't a real technological, I really want to talk about why this is important, but I think it's important to understand, that raw speed is, it's not all about one single number. If you're going to have to do like I do in my day job, in my, when I'm working, I do anywhere from 3 to 10 video conferences a day. Well, to be able to do a video conference, we have to have that ping speed. There's also jitter and latency and things like that, but that ping speed, we want to see that down, ideally below 50. And some of the satellite services that I've had in the past, that number is upwards of 500, 600 plus. And what that is that's milliseconds. So 600, 6/10 of a second. When we think about that, it's time you click your mouse and the mouse tells the computer, hey, send this request. The request goes up to the satellite, down from the satellite to the internet, to their hub, and then out to whatever computer we're talking to. By the time it comes back, that's our ping time. Well, gaming requires low ping times. And I don't want to talk about video games because I'm not really my thing. I don't know much about them. I can tell you the technology about them, but don't play a lot of games. My kids never played a lot of games on video games. But those numbers are important when we think about access to broadband, because that megabit number that you see published and you see advertised all the time is only one number. And we don't want to get, we need to understand when we go to look for broadband for our farms, we really need to have a solid understanding of what that number is and what it means. And what the other numbers are. We need to look at ping and latency and jitter, and there's all kinds of technical numbers. But, it gives us access, and why we should really push for this for our communities and for our farms and businesses is it gives us access to global communities or larger communities. I don't know if you listened to the last podcast, but we talked about, the last phone book was published in, the major publishing. I'm sure there's a couple still published, but the last phone book was, most phone companies stopped publishing a physical phone book in 2010. It's over a decade ago. So we have to, when we promote our business, when we list our business, when we make sure that our business is out there just to be found, and this doesn't even get into really marketing and promoting our business, but, just making sure our business can be found, we need to have, we call it a digital first mindset. We need to be thinking about these things, and to do that takes connection to the internet. Now, can we do it through our cell phones? Sure. Is it as good? Probably not. Is it close? In some instances, it's an acceptable alternative. Ideally, we'd have what's called FTTP, which is fiber to the premises, which means we have to our farm, we have a fiber optic line run, and we hub from wherever that is to the rest of our farm. And that's the way our farm works. We have, because of our other business, we have fiber optic run to the main location, which runs our business. And then for security systems and connectivity for updating tractors and things like that, we have from our main hub, we splice out from that through a network. But that FTTP or fiber to the premises is something that's important, especially as we start moving into truly getting aggressive about marketing our farms, marketing our businesses. You'll hear larger agriculture enterprises are talking about autonomous tractors and the data transfer that has to happen. Well, that takes connection to the internet. They're talking, we talk about, John Deere just released their completely autonomous tractor. Again, that's probably out of the realm of most of us for farming at this point. But like we talked about in technology adoption, there's a point at which that's going to become accessible. Think about, go back 20 years and think about the idea of having GPS built into a car. Well, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, That was almost unheard of unless you were buying one of the, Uber luxury cars. Now, it's become so common that almost all cars have some sort of technology connection, whether they have their built-in GPS or whether they allow you to connect through CarPlay, through Apple's system of CarPlay or Google's Auto. I forget what Google calls it or Android calls it, but it took time. But now it's accessible to almost everybody. Technology's coming to the farms. Now, big farms and kind of the people willing to take a stand on that and try it. Well, over time, if it's successful and if it is productive and meets the challenges of reducing cost and increasing safety and all of these things, well, then it will become more accessible and more accessible and more accessible. I'm not sure I like it. I think the fun of farming is driving the tractor. I don't want to, let the tractor drive itself. What's the fun in that? But if that's our business and we need to be able to run 4 tractors at once, and we don't, you only have so many employees, you only have so many people on your team, well, and it becomes accessible, well, then yeah, you do it. Someday that will be a reality. But to do that, we have to have access to high-speed internet. We have to have access to broadband internet. From a marketing standpoint, if we're a farm that makes a unique product, let's say, for example, that we make a product that is not a perishable food. Now, I'm a cattle rancher, so, I have a perishable food. But let's say I put some beehives in and I want to start selling beeswax products. Now, this is non-perishable, or at least has a long shelf life. Well, now, let's say I have a unique product. I have access to, if I have access to broadband internet, I have access to a global economy. I can sell, with some exceptions, anywhere in the world. I can get customers, build brand loyalty anywhere in the world. Before I had access to broadband, when I don't have internet at my farm, the only way I have access to that global economy is I have to find somebody who has access, and then they charge me a substantial fee because they have to make a living to get their access to this economy. And so it puts us, we're giving profit away when we don't need to. And as you know, if you're farming, we need to make every bit of profit we can because it's hard to do. And when we think about the ability to market ourselves and have that digital first mentality, and we need to have the access to markets and technology, well, to do all of this, we need access to broadband internet. Now, there's been, I think it was just in the past couple of weeks, the USDA announced a program where they're going to do, I think the number is actually $795 million in grants and loans to rural communities to get broadband internet distributed. Because, I've said it before, I think, on this podcast, where back in the 1990s, when we were all talking about internet and getting connected, it's been called the last mile problem. And that last mile problem is now we're starting to really reach those last miles, and we need to maintain that push to get everybody the ability to connect. Now, the USDA has offered, I think there's a new program called RDOF, the Rural Development Opportunity, whatever it is. And those are another series of grants and loans that our illustrious government is giving out to private companies to develop and push that last mile problem, complete that last mile problem, which is getting some sort of cable, fiber, whether it's fiber, Ethernet. There's some that are trying over power lines. There's a lot of technologies out there but making sure that we all have access. Because again, we go back to, when I want to compete, put me on a level playing field. If I lose, it's me that lost. It's because I didn't prepare enough. It's because I didn't try hard enough, or I just wasn't good enough. But it gives us and it puts us all on an equal playing field, and you can't ask for more than that. Now, I talked a little bit about satellite and some of the downsides of satellite internet for rural communities. Elon Musk just Starlink. You've probably all heard of it. One of the guys that works on this show, Brantley just put Starlink at his parents' house, and he did not even have a full guaranteed plan. They offered him access to what's called a best effort service, which means they don't guarantee any bandwidth, but they're going to make their best effort to it. And he installed it, and he's tested it out, and I've talked to him, and we've tested some stuff back and forth, and it's pretty impressive, even at best effort, compared to what was available before. We've video conferenced over it. We've transferred large files. We've done most of the things that you have to do in order to compete in business and run a successful business. We've been able to do those with Elon Musk's Starlink. And I'm sure if it's successful, this will not be the only one. There will be other competitors coming into the market. But that may be the solution. I mean, if you look at South America, for years, South America, from a technology standpoint in wireless, was light years ahead of the United States, because that was the only way they could connect the countries. They could make the connections was wirelessly. The United States, when you go back and look at AT&T and Ma Bell and all of the bells, they spent fortunes running wires, telephone lines to every house. So wireless was not as important. The U.S. did not catch up in wireless until, it was probably 10 years after South America was already wireless and doing data. The U.S. was sort of lagging behind because we had invested, the companies that control everything, had invested so much money in hardwire that we sort of lagged a little bit behind. But, when we look at the satellite now, that we're there. Our wireless we have a really good wireless program, but it still needs improvement. Yeah. I've got a good friend who works in roaming and stuff like that for one of the large wireless carriers. And, when I talk to him, I tell him every time I talk to him, I say, man, we need to get some better coverage out here. I live in a pretty rural area, and you've got, 2 antennas servicing the whole area. You don't reduce my bill any because we don't have great coverage. Cell phones still will not work at my house. You go inside my house, there's no cell service. So, we've still got ways to go. We don't have 100% coverage in the U.S. And this is, we're a rural area, but, we're not that rural. But going back to, kind of talking about the available technology, Elon Musk's satellite program has the potential to be a game changer. Now, again, I've only used it, and I've connected with it once, and I haven't actually connected. I've been talking to somebody who's been on it. It's a game changer, or could be. When we talk about satellite speeds, and we talked earlier about the ping. Well, ping speed is really important when we talk about video conferencing and telecommunications and the things we need to do in most cases to work remotely. I think the number he got was 45. Well, that's pretty dang good. I mean, that works. We were video conferencing the other morning with it, and it worked. And that's a potential equalizer. I think getting rural communities to run fiber to every house, I think that's wonderful because, again, I've kind of been talking about the wires and the technology, but the reality is the reason the technology needs to be there is because we, as rural businesses, from a physical standpoint, we are isolated. We have, so we need to be put on an equal playing field with everybody else. And I think by encouraging the internet companies to bring us internet, I mean, it's a big deal. It's important for us as a business. It's an equalizer. It gives us the ability to compete in a real way. And my friends, I'm I'm a capitalist. I like to compete. I like to win, but I like to do it in a fair way. I had a old friend, dear old friend, was lost touch with him. It happens with people. We moved. He moved away. I moved away from where we lived. But he always impressed me because he told a story. He was a very, very successful capitalist, very, very successful man. Donated huge sums of money to churches and civic organizations and causes. And, he always believed that if the taxes would get out of his way, he would donate more than. And he said there's a concept of benevolent capitalism. And I like that concept. I do. I'm not a greedy person, I don't think. Maybe some people would argue with me, but I believe, money's just a tool. And so I want to do good, so we do good. And capitalism doesn't have to be bad. I mean, we hear the stories of greed with, the big mega corporations and how they don't care about people. But I think I read the dust jacket on a book talking about a new Main Street economy. And I'm going to read the book, and I think we'll talk about it at some point. But the book, the whole concept was, and it was written by a guy who's a hedge fund manager, he was. And he said, economies are more than money. And we need to, capitalism is about encouraging, or should be, about encouraging creativity. And I'm not talking about being an artist and selling your painting. I'm talking about solving problems for real people, being creative to solve problems in a better way than it's been done in the past, the better mousetrap. We need to build things that save the environment or save money or save lives or do something. And, I like to farm. I mean, most of the farmers I know are some of the most creative and inventive people that I have ever met. And I've worked in a creative industry for the bulk of my career. And farmers are some of the most creative people. And we need to encourage that creativity. And that then when you add on to that a work ethic, I mean, I don't know many people that have as good of a work ethic as farmers. So, when we talk about, again, kind of jumping back to the internet and capitalism and all of these things, if we put American farmers and the small farmer and the Main Street economy, let's put us on a level playing field and say, now, let's compete. You're going to find creativity, innovation. You're going to find good people who are doing good for the world. And in that case, everybody wins, because let us compete on a level playing field. That's all I want. Now, I know there are going to be a lot of naysayers. Well, you're asking for tax dollars to do things. Well, you know what? We pay a lot of taxes. We should get some good from it. We should do things. Taxes are there to do things for the country and the community as a whole. And we are an underserved part of that community, the rural. Now, I'm not talking about me. I already have broadband internet. I'm not complaining about my connection. Is it expensive? Yes, it is. But I have it. Do my neighbors have it? No, I had to have it run just for me. I mean, it's a single line. But it's there. Does it need to be cheaper? Yes, it does. But again, put us on a level playing field and then let us compete. And farmers are again, I will stress this, some of the most creative, innovative, and hardworking people I know. Put us on an equal playing field and then get out of our way and let us work. You're going to see we're going to succeed because of those things. But to do those things in the modern world, we have to have access to information, access to broadband internet, and access to the global economy. Not just our local economy, not just national. We need access to that global economy, and the internet does that for us. And with that, I'm going to call this one done. I hope you have a wonderful day. Good luck. God bless. And I'll see you in the next one.